Welcome to Beyond the Music, the podcast where we dive into the life and stories of people who shape the world of music. My name is Lina.
And I'm Karina. We're both classically trained singers, and this podcast is our chance to explore the fascinating intersections of music, history, and humanity.
Last time, we kicked off our podcast with a look at the Bachs, Johann Sebastian Bach and his son Carl Philipp Emanuel especially. And it was quite the fascinating dive into their family dynamics, their contrasting musical styles, and how they influenced music history.
I thought my family was complicated, but their family was a whole new level.
Yeah, they are, and there are a lot of them. So, if you are interested in reading more about the Bachs, by the way, just for the listeners of last episode, there's a book. I don't know if it's available in English, but in German it's called Die Bachs, eine deutsche Familie, which is translated to The Bachs, a German family, where it starts already before Johann Sebastian Bach. So if you want to know everything about every Bach there ever was, here you go. But now, today we're diving not really into the life of only one person, but more so what lies behind the term Socialist Realism. And no, did you hear already of that, Karina?
No, I'm going in this completely blind, so I'll have a lot of questions for you moving through this. I'm very interested.
That's good. This is not gonna be the most topic-wise fun episode, kind of, because it's maybe one of the darkest yet most fascinating chapters of music history. It is about how composers lived and worked under the oppressive regimes of Stalinist Russia and Nazi Germany.
Wow.
Which is what made this term socialist realism to be a thing in musicology. Well, music during this period wasn't just art, it was used as a weapon, a means of propaganda, and even a form of resistance. We'll talk about the composers who navigated these treacherous waters and sometimes even risking everything for their art.
Wow.
So are you ready?
Okay, I may need a couple of breaths, but I think I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, so let's start with where everything with this term kind of started. It is in Stalin's Soviet Union, where music was seen as a tool of the state. The government enforced a strict policy of socialist realism, which required music to be uplifting, patriotic, and accessible to the working class. Anything too complex or avant-garde was dismissed as formalist and considered dangerous to the ideas of socialism. Can you imagine that?
No,
you just are allowed to compose fun music.
Wow.
More dramatic.
Oh, well, there goes my job.
Well, one of the most famous examples of this control is the story of Dmitri Shostakovich, which you maybe know because he's quite the famous composer of Russia.
Very, yes.
In 1936, Stalin attended a performance of his opera, Lady Macbeth of the Minsk district. And according to accounts, Stalin left early, unimpressed.
No.
Shortly after, yeah, exactly. It's a great opera. I wrote my bachelor thesis about this, so maybe I will tell about that in another episode if I want to. But, well, yes. Shortly after, Pravda, which is a state newspaper, published a review calling it muddle instead of music.
Oh my gosh, that is harsh.
Yes, this denunciation put Shostakovich's career and even his life at great risk because, we have the socialist realism, and this didn't fit into there, especially if the leader of your country isn't liking the PCCs. you
Oh,
can imagine it's not good.
that is scary. You compose a piece that you have put your heart and soul into, and you are risking your life if the head of the country doesn't approve. Wow.
Yeah. Well, to recover, Shostakovich composed Symphony Number 5 in 1937. Officially, it was billed as a Soviet artist's response to just criticism. Its triumphant finale appears to celebrate Soviet ideas and ideals, but many believe it contains a hidden message, a
No.
forced, hollowing rejoicing. It's kind of depending on how it's played. The ending can sound either patriotic or painfully ironic.
Wow. Oh, that's a bit tongue in cheek.
Yeah. I
Whoa.
mean, what do you think about composers embedding submersive messages in their work?
Oh, I love it. I love a good mystery. My favorite go-to movies are mysteries. I just love them. So when I see a mystery, especially in music that the composer has done, I am enjoying every second of it.
Well, then you will really enjoy diving more into Shostakovich symphonies because, I mean, after his experience with his opera, he didn't compose so many operas anymore, but he
Oh,
did compose a whole bunch of symphonies. And if you dive into them and read a little bit more about them, you will find out that he was really good in hiding messages in his music and that he wasn't supporting the regime that much.
wow. So these messages, were they just about not supporting the regime, or were there other different messages?
Like it's mostly about kind of mocking,
Oh.
like he's sometimes having kind of a carnival music
Ah.
and doing that, like, but it doesn't sound like, like stuff like this. There's like uh he put a lot of stuff in there where when you dive more into it and look behind everything, you can there are also like a lot of musicologists who wrote stuff about that and researched that. And so there's still a lot to read, but I don't talk today just about Shostakovich. He was brilliant at like walking between like compliance and resistance. So
Mhm.
this is what allowed his music to survive while offering deeper meanings for those who knew how to listen, kind of.
Well,
So
I got a question about that, about these.
yeah.
As I said, I love a good mystery. These messages, did did he ever admit to these messages, or was it more if you knew that they were in there? How were these messages found?
Well, of course, he cannot say that he's critiquing the regime.
Mhm.
Um, but there are some, like you can find in letters that he's writing about different styles of music and what's his opinions about him is that I mean, it's not like he wrote it as a like literal message. I'm against that. It's more like um, he kind of took a rhythm and changed that so it's maybe lanking a little bit
Oh,
or like doing it like this, like in little things. And
wow.
no one who just hears that thinks this, that's interesting, and maybe something a little bit newer. Too new wasn't that good because that would be too avant-garde, but like, yeah, so it's more like those little things, taking some styles and kind of changing them in a certain way. So
Oh, I love it. Wow. I'm
yeah.
definitely going to be listening to that now. If I ever listen to a Shostakovich in the future, I'll definitely be
Oh,
lit.
I really love, especially in his symphonies, he did that a lot because they were often composed for like bigger events. So yeah, but he wasn't the only composer navigating these treacherous waters.
Mm.
Alexandre Mosolov, I'm really probably not saying that name right, but well, Alexander Mosolov, he was an avant-garde musician and he was famous for his experimental works, including the iron foundry.
Mhm.
But in the late 1930s, he was arrested and sent to a labor camp.
Now he was in
Yeah,
Russia as well.
he was a Russian composer and he knew about like the social realism, the rules coming with that, but he was just not caring about that. He was still wanting to do his music and wanting to do what he wanted to do. So he did and was sent for that to a labor camp where
Oh.
you can think about it's never nice in a labor camp.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And after his release, he didn't die there, but
Good.
after his release, he conformed to the regime's expectations, writing folk-inspired pieces instead. So they kind of broke his resistance.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Soviet regime didn't just target individuals; they targeted entire artistic movements, like the avant-garde music that has thrived after the Russian Revolution in the 1920s. And this movement was completely suppressed by the 1930s because Stalin wanted music that reinforced his vision of a united, idealized Soviet society and not music that challenged or questioned it.
Wow. I mean, like speaking as an artist, that would be so hard for me to live in that kind of a environment of being told what I can and cannot do as an artist. That's
I
tough.
mean, especially as a composer, because you're doing new music.
Hmm.
I mean, as a singer, for example, you get hired to perform music. Then maybe you get have the problem if you get hired for the wrong music, I can imagine.
Mm.
But other than that, you would normally play what was allowed to be played, no? But especially composers who always want to invent something new, I think they have had it probably the hardest in that time. Yeah. Well, but despite this, composers like Prokofiev, which you maybe also know,
Definitely. Hmm.
definitely managed to retain some individuality. He composed state approved patriotic works, but he also created masterpieces like Romeo and Juliet,
Oh.
which showcased his unique kind of composing style. So
Mm.
he kind of managed, like Shostakovich also kind of did, he managed to find the middle ground, kind of, to be still able to have his style and do something which he liked to do, but then do a lot of stuff which the regime liked, so the other thing wouldn't be so bad.
Mm.
Kind of.
Well, his music,
Well,
especially Romeo and Juliet, it's still being played to this
yeah,
day. It's a very famous piece of, I think, a masterpiece of music.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe it's a little bit easier with a piece like that because it's a ballet,
Hmm.
and Shostakovich did do an opera where you always have words.
Yes, yes.
Also, like, I don't know if I want to keep Lady Macbeth as an opera as an option for some episode because I really like that one.
That would
So
be
I won't tell
fun.
too much.
Oh, and here I'm dying to debate the Lady Macbeth Verdi with you and how they are similar and different. But like you
You
said, that's
see,
for a,
that's the thing. Lady Macbeth, Shostakovich has nothing to do with the Shakespeare
oh,
Macbeth.
I think we definitely
It's
need to
not
have an
based on
episode.
Shakespeare. That's what I can tell already. They have just the name in common. It's not based on the Shakespeare novel.
Oh, definitely, we're going to need an episode on that.
All right. I mean, yeah, probably do that. So, but now we turn to um, the other regime, like the Nazi Germany.
Mm.
Yeah. So the Nazis also weaponized music, but their focus was quite different. Instead of targeting styles, as Stalin did, they targeted individuals.
Wow.
Like we all know, like Jewish composers, or artists or whatever, like no matter how their work aligned with the Nazi ideals, they were banned outright just because they were Jews.
Mm.
So works by Mendelssohn, Mahler, and Schönberg, they
Oh,
were blacklisted as
oh.
degenerate, and it was simply because of their heritage.
Well, I'm just glad that their music did survive because those composers have some of the most beautiful music, especially for us
Yeah,
singers.
I mean, they burned a lot, but we don't know if there's stuff which existed there and does not exist anymore, but at least a lot of their music, because they were already so known and there was a lot of copies
Mhm.
survive. Well, and there was Leon Jessel as a heartbreaking example. He was a celebrated composer of operettas,
Mm.
but his Jewish background made him a target. His works were banned, and in 1942 he was arrested and tortured by the Gestapo and eventually dying from his injuries. So,
Oh my God.
um, at least in Stalin regime, you were able to just kind of please the regime and be safe.
Hmm.
Here, it's just because you have the bad luck to be born in a different cultural background, kind of in a different religion.
Yeah,
Like, it's ridiculous. Well,
it is. And I'm so glad that nowadays we are more accepting of everyone because I do believe that the more together we are, the more we shine as a human race. We really have to
hmm,
work together and love each other.
exactly. Because that was also because I was thinking about, well, it's a topic which is quite, it fits quite well in the times at the moment. Because we have Russia at the moment, which is going in the direction, and we have also still regimes like North Korea, and well, and there's a lot of stuff happening at the moment, and I think we just should remind ourselves about that, like it wasn't that great back then, that
Mhm.
we just should kind of accept everyone as person with
Yeah.
human rights.
Well, oh, it was just in my head. There was a famous saying about history. So, for anyone who's listening, if you want to leave a comment, if you know this saying or who said it, please let us know because I love this saying. It's something about we need to remember history or we're doomed to repeat it.
Mm, mhm.
Oh, and I wish I knew who it was. So please, if anyone listening knows, leave a comment because I'm trying to find who said this. It is so relevant nowadays. We really need
Mm,
to love each other and work together.
exactly. Because we came already that far.
Yeah, we've seen the damage that this kind of thinking can have. I mean, the music that was lost because of this, the geniuses, the masterpieces, the it's absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, back to the Nazi regime and how the composers and artists suffered under that. Um, like at the same time, the like the thing happened with, yeah, with Leon Jessel. The same time, the Nazi co-opted the music of composers like Wagner and Beethoven
Mm.
to symbolize Aryan supremacy. And for example, Wagner's operas were especially tied to Hitler's ideology, even though Wagner had been dead for decades.
Hmm.
So that is why he is kind of still being called the Hitler composer, kind of Hitler music and stuff, because they used it for their beliefs, the music, and played it a lot because it's so, like, because Wagner loved like the old germanischen Sagen, like how is it called in English?
Mythologies?
like the mythologies of like German, like it's not German mythologies, but like Germania, which is
Yeah,
the old
mhm.
area, like with, and she loved that, and it was maybe like that's why Hitler thought, well, that's really German, that's our music. I don't know. Well, composers like Arnold Schönberg, however, fled Germany. I mean, of course, he is a Jewish background, so it's a good thing he fled.
Yes.
And because he became a prominent voice in exile against the German regime. And Schönberg's 12-tone technique, which he invented, which he is known for,
Yeah.
was seen as the antithesis of Nazi ideals. And it found a new life in the United States, where he also became an influential teacher and composer. So he built his life then somewhere else where he was appreciated for what he did.
And he's still appreciated nowadays. That
Yeah.
12-tone idea, I remember studying it in university and I was fascinated by it. I just love it.
Yeah. And he's actually now a little bit more than 70 years dead. So,
Really?
yeah, because now his music is free to perform in Germany, at least,
Ooh.
because we have the GEMA. Nothing is free until the composer is more than 70 years dead.
Wow.
Yeah. So, well, what is remarkable is how music became a tool of resistance, even in those oppressive regimes like Shostakovich's Symphony No. 5, which allowed listeners to find hidden messages of defiance. And Nazi Germany music provided hope in the darkest of places. Like, take the children's opera Brundibar. It was performed in the Theresienstadt concentration camp. And it became a symbol of resilience and community. Like the story of children defeating a tyrant offered a quite but powerful message of hope. And it's quite interesting that they even allowed to perform that in the concentration camp. But well,
Well,
yeah, and these
I think we can definitely agree that music is the universal language that we all speak, whether we are professionally trained or it's just embedded in our hearts. We all speak the same language when it comes to music at the end of the day.
yeah, and it shows also like the how music becomes kind of a place where also like even especially in the darkest times, um people have the possibility to show defiance, and resilience kind of through music, and also music helps them to go through those times. I mean, even under unimaginable oppressions, composers and performers found ways to preserve their humanity and inspire others. I mean, and they were always at risk that someone will kind of like always going like between, trying to be able to tell what they don't like, but not too much, so they don't get like killed
Well,
because of that.
let's hope that those that it doesn't happen again to that extent, and we as human beings can continue to learn, work together, and just share such beautiful
Yeah,
artistry.
exactly. Well, let's compare those two regimes, because while both regimes weaponized music, they had quite the different approaches. Like Stalin focused on controlling the styles and suppressing anything avant-garde or experimental. And in contrast, the Nazi just focused on people, banning individuals based on race and ideology. But despite their differences, both regimes used music as a tool to project power and control, providing the art is never created in a vacuum. So it's always like history based, what is composed, how it's composed. It's always in a context. Even today, even if you think about pop music, it also changes.
Oh, yes. Well, here's another saying. Does life influence art or does art influence life?
That's a good one.
Oh, I love a good saying.
Yeah, and I think ultimately these stories remind us that while music can be weaponized, it also serves as a powerful form of resistance, and it is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Oh, well, do you have anything else to add? No? Okay, so then thank you for joining me today for this exploration of music under dictatorship. And well, these stories were quite sobering, but they also showed the enduring power of art to inspire and resist. So it also showed that there is still hope with music, like through music. And next time on Beyond the Music, we'll explore another chapter of music history. And until then, keep listening and discovering the stories behind the music.
See
See
you
you next
next
time.
time.